Jimmy Capra talks about an early crisis of confidence he had.
Next thing, I get a call from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Office. And they said, hey, we're deconflicting. Looks like we're targeting the same guy. We'll come and meet you. So now I'm like, okay. So I meet this sergeant, and I forget it, Sergeant Ed Huffman. We wind up being one of my close friends who lost him to cancer a few years ago. And we're sitting out there, and I tell him, I see him. I said, well, Sergeant, I said, and I am like, I feel like I'm back in the military. This is what I got. This is what I have. This is this, that, and the other thing. And he's asking me a million questions. This is exactly.
You're an open book.
I'm just everything. And then he was such a phenomenal guy, a great mentor. He looks at me and he asked me a few more questions. And I remember looking at him, I said, Sergeant, can I tell you something? And he looks at me, yeah, Jimmy, what's up? I go, and this is exactly what I said. I go, I have no idea what I'm doing.
Welcome to Game of Crimes. All right, welcome back, all you major players and playerettes and anything in between. We will just throw letters at it until we get something that fits you. Welcome back to Game of Crimes. I am the major player and the major host of this major podcast, Major Morgan Wright, and I'm here with Private.
This will be Colonel Steve Murphy. I'm going to whip his ass later. Don't worry. But you can call me Murph.
Colonel. right, Colonel.
You got to have some fun.
All right, Colonel. Hey, guys, thanks for joining us again. This is going to be, we're going to have some fun. We actually had a great episode last time. We got so many great comments about Tommy Cindric and the takedown of the modern James Bond villain, Paul LaRue.
That was cool.
And I'll tell you what, Tommy holds the record, man. 4,722 uses of the F-bomb, and that was just in one part.
And I believe that's true. Good man, though. Good man.
Good man. This is the type of guy you want on your side. He is relentless as they come. And you know what it just proves? You can just run, but you'll just go to jail tired. And Paul LaRue went to jail very tired.
Well, that's true. When he, they had to carry him there. He was so tired he couldn't be carried out to the. He had to be carried out to the jet.
See the pictures on GameOfCrimesPodcast.com. Go to the episode page. You'll see Paul LaRue was a big guy. They had to use 2 belly chains on the front of him, and leg irons to handcuff him. There's no way you were going to use regular handcuffs on this guy.
Hey, what a snappy dresser he was, wasn't he?
Oh,
looked like he was wearing burlap bags and baggy shorts.
Well, we hope you guys enjoyed that. And if you enjoyed it, there's a way to show us. Just head on over to Apple and Spotify. Hit that thing called 5 stars. 5 stars, that's 5 stars. Hit those 5 stars. There are no other stars available for Game of Crimes. Only 5 stars. We want you to hit the 5 stars. Did I mention 5 stars, Steve? Did I mention that?
I don't think so. Be sure you get that in there.
5 stars. All right. And then also head on over to our website, gameofcrimespodcast.com. We've got the stuff on there. We've got the book list. Got this episode we have coming out today. Jimmy Capra, we'll talk about him in a minute. He's got several books we're going to put on there. Yeah. This guy's written a few, some children's books and stuff, but head on over there. And in fact, we've got some guests coming up too that also have some books. So make sure you get that, our merch, our mailing list. Also follow us on that thing called social media at Game of Crimes on Twitter, at Game of Crimes Podcast on Facebook and the Instagram. But where you got to be is on patreon.com. We have just secured our schedule for recording, and we are going to be coming out with Chris and Dave. We will tell you more about it later, but this will be season 3 of Narcos, the takedown of the Cali cartel by the guys who took down the Cali cartel. We thought, what a better way to do this. We had you and JP taking down Pablo. Yep. We got Chris and Dave taking down the gentlemen of the Cali cartel.
Yep.
Where else do you get this stuff, Murph? Tell me, where else do you find this stuff?
This is Game of Crimes is the only place, and it's cool because they're going to talk about what you saw in Narcos and what's true and what's Hollywood, and they're going to tell some stories that they weren't allowed to tell, maybe in the show. And we told them, if you don't have any funny stories, don't come on the show. So let's see what happens here. I mean, you guys know me. I've got a country accent. Well, they say when Dave Mitchell speaks Spanish with his accent, it comes out really funny. So
we're going to have some fun, and we're going to find out what the hell possessed you guys to go out into that field.
Yes, that's absolutely.
Absolutely. So, but you're going to have to listen if you want to find out. Patreon.com/Game of Crimes. Plus, we've got our new series called 911, What's Your Emergency? That's coming out. We've got our live stream coming out where we are reviewing by the time you hear this, we will have reviewed Silence of the Lambs and talk about Hannibal Lecter and why he likes to eat your liver with fava beans and a bottle
Ugh.
of nice Chianti.
Oh, that's so gross.
Yeah, so well, I know because who would mix liver and fava beans? I mean, they just don't go together, especially with a Chianti. So, but you got to come listen to our analysis of that. Also, head on over to PayPal.com. Use our email gameofcrimespodcast@gmail.com or PayPal.me/gameofcrimes. Whatever it makes it easier for you to support the show and for us to help bring you even more exciting content. But before we get started even further, a quick disclaimer, as they say, this is a show about crime. We talk about bad people doing bad things and bad people doing bad things to good people. We do take the story seriously, but
We will never take ourselves serious. It's too much fun.
and I got proof that we don't take ourselves serious. Wait till you hear this next part, and guess what time it is, Murph?
Oh, it's time for
Small town police blotter.
Woohoo!
You moved to Florida, you're getting really slow, man. You got to pick it up. So,
Turtle
hey,
Land down here.
well, this is why you wouldn't survive in this next story. This comes to us via Christy Kelly from our Game of Crimes fan group.
She's always coming up with something, isn't she?
Oh, good stuff, Christy. Good
Yeah.
stuff. So, even though it's not a small town, it's still a hell of a funny story. So, a man tells a judge that Dale Earnhardt Sr., the Intimidator, number 3, who died, told him to drive the wrong way on the freeway. He said that this was his. The authorities arrested Daniel Asif. What a name, Asif. 51 Friday on suspicion of crashing into multiple cars and bicycles. Jail records show he faces charges including attempted murder, battery, and driving under the influence. Well, there's a shock, right? He said this was for Dale Earnhardt Sr., the Intimidator. He added that the late NASCAR driver told him to drive the wrong way to get the mayor's attention to bring NASCAR back to the city.
How do you spell dumbass?
Well, here comes another shock. Guess what else he was under the influence of? Had heroin and meth in his system at the time of his arrest.
A tweaker on top of everything else. Good Lord.
Well, and here's what will not come as a shock. He was scheduled to appear in court for a competency hearing, so he remains in jail on a $500,000 bond. What a moron.
He doesn't even have an L on his forehead. He's got a big I for idiot.
Well, here comes the one with the S on your forehead because it stands for shrimp. Because this comes from Terry Burrows, again from our Game of Crimes fan group. You got to get into the super secret fan group. We got our fan page, our main one, and then we have our group, our super secret group. Man breaks into home, takes bath, eats shrimp, and leaves $200 for damages. A New Mexico man, Steve, who he didn't allegedly broke in. He broke in. They say I'm going to have a whole series on the use of the word allegedly. Anyway,
Yeah.
took a bath, ate some shrimp, and drank a beer before being confronted by the homeowner. Has been arrested. This guy's name, Terrell Christensen, 34, was arrested for breaking into the home after smashing a window. When he was confronted by the homeowner, he apologized, told him he just needed a warm place to sleep, and left the man $200 to repair the window. Well, the man had a rifle with him when he left the home, according to police. So Christensen told investigators he was caught in a blizzard Sunday and was afraid he would freeze. Police told him he felt bad about breaking the window and had left money for the owner. Anyway, while asked why he broke into the home, the man said his family was killed in East Texas and he was running from somebody.
Wow. He's conscientious. He left money, even though he's a criminal. Wow. What? I tell you, every time we do this, we discover a whole new class of morons out there.
Oh, well, we are going to now up the game here, Steve.
Oh, geez.
Because I'm going to read you the headline in just a second. A Louisianan, 22, was spotted trying to enter multiple parked cars. An accused auto burglar told Louisiana cops that he was sleepwalking when he entered a parked pickup late Wednesday, according to an arrest affidavit. Police were responding to a call about somebody pulling on door handles in the parking lot of a Monroe apartment complex. They spotted Christopher Samuel walking away. Witness told officers they observed this guy trying to enter multiple vehicles. When the cops confronted him, he reportedly admitted entering the pickup, but did so because he said he was sleepwalking. Well, how do you know you're sleepwalking?
I don't know. Does he wake himself up snoring? I mean, the cops show up and you're like, oh,
well,
how did I get here?
This is some magic sleepwalking because the court filing does not indicate where Samuel purportedly had been snoozing when he began sleepwalking, but his home address is more than 3 miles from the spot where he was apprehended.
That's a long sleepwalk.
That is some magic sleepwalking, my friends. Some magic sleepwalking.
Geez. It's just amazing the stories that people come up with, and they think, cops are going to believe this crap. And I was talking to some people this morning, and they said, you're probably used to people lying to you. I said, That's what everybody does. You just expect them to lie to you.
Well, here, let me lie to you. Let me. I'm going to give you a date and see if you agree with it. So, guess what? It's
Okay.
time for What Year Was It?
Woohoo!
So this one comes to us from the Richmond News Leader in Richmond, Virginia. This happened on June 19th. I'm going to give you a year, and you're going to have to tell me if the year is correct now. So I'm going to try and lie to you and convince you that it's this year. All right? Confessions.
You lie to me all the time. So
yeah, confessions name officer and attorney. Believe it or not, this comes out of Detroit. Detroit police say kidnapping racket revealed by gang members. Detroit police today announced that they had obtained confessions involving a high police official. In those days, high meant high ranking, not Snoop Dogg high. And a prominent attorney from Joseph Leggs Lehman, convicted kidnapper, and another member of Lehman's gang of kidnappers and murderers. Lehman told a detailed story of the kidnapping racket in Detroit, covering almost 10 years during his reign of terror, which culminated last year in the kidnapping and murder of David Cass, son of Garen Cass, wealthy retired real estate man. Hundreds of thousands of dollars of ransomware money was collected. Lehman said he decided to tell all he knew after he found out he was being double-crossed by the police official in the kidnapping of Heron Cohn, retired furniture dealer. $20,000 ransom money was left in an automobile and taken by the official. Cohn was freed, but Lehman received none of the money. He got stiffed, Steve. A kidnapper and a crook got stiffed by a high police official.
I will probably lose zero sleep over this story.
Lose zero sleep. So, Steve, I'm going to tell you right now, this occurred on June 19th, 1927.
No, there was no ransomware back then.
Not ransomware, ransom.
You said ransomware.
No, I said ransom.
No, you better go back and listen to it. You mentioned ransomware.
I can edit this out and it will say I said ransom.
Oh, I'm going to say that's false.
Well, then what year was it?
I have no idea. 19, let me think, 2019.
2019?
Yeah, I don't know.
No. January 19th, 1930.
There you go. Looky there. Now, how many
1930.
times? This year is just my year. I'm getting all of these right.
You didn't get this one right at all. You were off.
You said 29.
No.
You said ransomware.
Why would I be talking about ransomware and kidnappings?
See, you lied to start with. Now you're still lying.
How do you
You're
know?
lying. I know.
How do you know I'm lying?
Well, because I can see you on video and your nose is growing.
No, you know how I know you're lying? Your lips are moving.
There you go.
There we go. Anyway, when it is edited, it will say that I said ransom, not ransomware. Anyway.
All right, everybody, just, log in and tell us Murph's right. Morgan's full of you know what.
Yeah. Well, anyway, back to our regularly scheduled intro for our next podcast. So in our next one coming up,
here we go.
this name came up during our episode with Tommy Sindrick. This name has come up with some other folks. And we thought it would be cool to get somebody in who helped investigate the largest seizure of cocaine. I mean, I think ever, right? In DEA, at least in the United States, domestic seizure. I haven't heard of anything bigger.
At that time, it was the largest because, not only was the coke there, the cash was there, which is really unusual because they never put the cash in the coke. The same, the dope and drugs don't go together. But this guy that we're bringing on, James Capra, Jimmy Capra, superhero, love this guy, had the opportunity to work for him when he was chief of operations at DEA. This, ladies and gentlemen, I'm telling you, this is a man that you would want to work for. He's, in our, law enforcement jargon, we'd say he's a cop's cop. This is a guy that you can trust. This is a guy, when he gets his butt chewed out, doesn't share it with everybody else. With him, the buck does stop here. He's got the responsibility. And you know what? I keep saying I don't have heroes, but Jimmy is a man that I truly admire. I mean, even into retirement, the guy's doing fantastic things.
Yeah, he is. And he's got some great books, which we'll talk about on this episode. But the only way to find out how cool Jimmy is and hear about his books is we got to ask you one question, Murph. Are you ready to play the biggest, baddest, most dangerous game of all, the game of crimes?
Ladies and gentlemen, you're not going to believe what you're getting ready to hear. So get in, sit down, shut up, and hold on. Come on, Jamie, let's go.
Well, folks, I got to tell you, we almost didn't make it to this podcast between Murph and our next guest we're about to tell you about. I was trying to, hey, guys, how about we save some of this good banter for the podcast? So, hey, I think I was able to talk him into it. So welcome to the podcast. No, he's not related to the famous movie producer, Frank Capra, but our buddy Jimmy Capra. Jimmy, welcome to Game of Crimes.
Woohoo!
Thank you, brother. Thanks, guys. It's good to be with you.
It's good to have you on here. This is, you know, you guys have heard me say this a lot of times. I don't have heroes. I have people that I respect and I look up to. And this is one of the guys right here, Jimmy Capra, what he did in DEA, his military service. And you're going to find out why I look up to this guy.
Well, is he taller than you?
Nope.
Nope.
No.
His chest is about twice the size of mine, but I think he can bench press me.
I think they said that about Dolly Parton one time. She's as tall laying down as she is standing up. That sounds like Jimmy, right? Got the chest going.
Yeah.
Now, don't give me the hard time about jokes, folks. It's a joke she said, not I did. So I'm just repeating it. So, anyways, hey Jimmy. So this is fun too because we had a great pre-call. And the other thing too is we're getting you at the right time because you're going in for shoulder surgery here in a few days, right?
It actually got canceled. Because
wait a minute. You mean we rushed this podcast and you canceled on us? I can't believe this.
So at the last minute, I started coughing. I went to see my doc, and he said, "Hey, you got bronchitis. That's why I'm trying to make sure I can hit the mute mic because I'm hacking and I'm on albuterol." But he said, we should put it off for a couple of weeks. So which I was like, okay, if we have to. Because I went through it with my right shoulder, and 2 years ago they said your left is going to have to do the same thing. So that's what you pay for, trying to be a tough guy, lifting weights all those years.
Bro, I've been through both shoulders, and the one on the left, they found arthritis in there, and they scraped it out, and that just extended the recovery time by like a month.
Yeah.
This sounds like a freaking AARP podcast.
That's it.
You know you've come of age. I was just up with a good friend of mine. You know come of age when we sit around talking about, I had that. Oh, I had that time too. Hey, did you get this checked out?
Like, hey, check my scar over here.
Yeah. You start talking about weird things. So
I've had the right knee done. I'm going in for the left knee here in about 3 weeks.
There you go, man.
It sucks. Getting old sucks.
Damn. Well, hey, I'll tell you what. How about we get back to our regularly scheduled podcast?
Oh, I keep forgetting Morgan's on here with us, Jimmy. Sorry about that.
Hey, Jimmy, as we do with everybody, other than talking about our aches and pains, oi, my back, at this stage. Hey, we always want to start off with everybody. It's kind of like, you kind of had a unique path of getting into law enforcement because you had armed service ADD, if we can call that ASS ADD, ASAD, right? So how the hell did you end up in law enforcement considering you were Air Force, Navy, and then, of course, the best branch of all, Army. So let's talk about your path of going through that and finally ending up at DEA when you finally figured out what you wanted to be.
Yeah, that's pretty easy. When my dad was a New York City police officer and got hurt on the job pretty bad, broke his back and neck on motors, and we moved to upstate New York, and probably one of the poorest counties up there. Big family, 7 of us, 6 boys and a girl.
Hey, Jimmy, how long was he on NYPD before that accident? Because this is going to tie into a story about your dad that I think is just really poignant, and relevant.
Yeah, his total police time was 16 years. He was a Korean War guy, got out and joined the Port Authority for 3 years, and then went over to New York City. And then did foot patrol, radio car. That's what they called them back then, radio cars. And then went to motors. Motors was the elite thing. And he was coming off the Grand Central Parkway one morning, and bike slipped out, and he hit a box truck. He said, the last thing I saw was going over the telephone pole house. But he was a bull because he was an artillery guy during Korea. So landed on the base of his neck. And by the grace of God, he fractured his neck, but broke his back. But a few years later, had surgery, and they said you're not working anymore. So we moved.
When you say he joined the elite group of the motors, that means the cool guys, right?
Yeah, no, you know what? Motor officers, they and if there are any motor officers listening, they'll tell you. My father would say there's 2 types: those who are fallen and those who are gonna fall. So so we grew up, kind of grew up as I got older with stories about the police department, but they weren't stories about there I was. There was my dad would talk about things like people eking out an existence. So I used to hang on every word when he would be talking stories. Anyway, long and short of it is I was a horrible student, as with most of my brothers, and barely got out of high school. No kidding, we were told early on that we'd never amount to anything, and that doesn't. It's not because it makes a good story. It's actually true.
Who were you told that by?
I had a teacher walking down the hall one day, and we were good students. Well, I mean, we were good kids. My father wouldn't put up with, your disrespectful work ethic, but terrible students, man. I still don't know. I laugh. how I got out of high school. Matter of fact, I always say when I go out to speak, I said, if I wouldn't know why they'd be alive, or even if they'd remember, if I had any teachers. And they say, that guy, he writes books, he has a couple of degrees, he had a successful career. They would say, oh no, that guy is a bum. He made all that up.
Jimmy, I got to tell you, that is something I've heard so many people forget what the narrative is for a kid when you've told that over and over again. Oh, you can't be a teacher, and telling girls back then, oh, you can't do this,
Yeah.
and you can't be doctors. People don't realize the power, right, that narrative has on you.
Yeah, and when we later on when we talk about leadership, we'll talk about that thing that your tongue is the power to destroy and to heal. But yeah, so this one teacher, he's a miserable, and I would have liked to take a chair to his head, and I swear I thought, my father he'd kill me if I said anything or did anything. And so barely got out of high school and joined the military. I was actually sitting around for a year, tried to go to community college, but I was working 3 jobs. And that's, again, just kind of an expectation. And then just realizing you wake up and go, man, is there something more for me? And, we had a pretty strong faith and always have. And you start wondering, what really am I here for? What's my purpose? And I remember coming home one night after washing UPS trucks, and my dad was sitting there. And I remember looking at him and said, Pop, I can't stay here. I got to get out of here. This is crazy. And we had a long conversation about the military. And a few weeks later, next thing you know, I was signed up, headed on my way in 2 months, Navy boot camp. And,
oh, come on now. Navy boot camp. The hardest thing about Navy boot camp, I mean, it's just putting on your shoes. It's really not that tough in the Navy. Come on.
It's a little bit harder than Air Force boot camp, I would say that.
Well, that's the hardest thing about Air Force boot camp is picking which chow hall you're going to have your 5-star meal in.
So my whole family covers all the services. I'll never forget my brother, when I was off to boot camp, because he was in the Air Force, he says, hey, you'll learn to fold your underwear and march. Just shut up and do it. So, but I became a corpsman, a medic, and or wanted to become one. And then I got to corps school, and again was told I never forget, first class. He said, you shouldn't be here. You're too stupid. And because I couldn't do medical math, you had to change, grams into milligrams and all this other stuff. So, I struggled, but we had 2 guys in my class who were smart guys who, for whatever reason, took a liking to me and helped me get through. So, and then when I landed at of course, I was in at the most peaceful time you can be in. Carter was the president back then. We had just pulled out a few years earlier, Vietnam, and there wasn't. I didn't get deployed. I didn't go out on a ship, but I fell in love with. I think serving. I fell in love with the uniform. I became what we call a 4.0 sailor. I was strapped. I loved my job, but you still.
Now, hold on there for a second. That is a term I've used before, other folks, and it may have gone past people, but that is a unique military term when we talk about strack.
Yeah.
Let's talk about strack for a second. What did it mean to be strack?
Well, you came to work early. Your uniform was impeccable. Your military bearing was impeccable. You understood your rank. You understood where you were on the totem pole. You respected the authority and the officers and your command and everything. That's, you did your job.
4.0?
Yeah. It's just like a college GPA, you can from 1.0 to 4.0. That's, I kind of always moved in that direction because you get focused on that. Not to be morally superior, but to be, you want to be proud about how you serve. And my dad used to say this all the time. He would say, and I've carried this my whole life. I've written about it. My dad said, you want to be the kind of person, when we were young, you need to be the kind of person. First, he'd say, I don't care if you're a garbage man or you're a brain surgeon. You going to work on time is being late. That's number 1. Number 2, you want to be the kind of person that people look at and say, I want them on my team. I want them in my unit. Not because you were so better, it's because you can be relied on, you can be trusted, your character, your integrity. But he never used those words, right? He never used character. He never used integrity. He had a 10th grade education, but I used to tell people he's one of the smartest men I've ever met. So 2 heroes in my life, him and probably my oldest brother, Tony, when I was growing up. So, that's, how did I get in a long way, how did I get into law enforcement? It was really, I had a brief brain fart when I got out and started college, I figured, hell, I've been in medical field. I said, I'll just become a doctor. And I knew there's no way, there was no way that I have the patience or anything for that. And I remember when I started college, I was a pre-med major that lasted one semester. I failed like the lab, the zoology, this, that, and the other thing. I said, no, this is not for me. This is this. I'm dissecting a starfish looking for its gonads. I go, what the hell does that have to do with anything? So,
Funny, Murphy does that with alligators in his backyard. Where's them damn gonads at?
You better be quick when you find them because
Yeah,
you miss,
man.
you're gonna get
You
bit.
ain't got long. Yeah.
but you know what? But I was fortunate. I had a good friend that unfortunately I've lost track of for over 20 years. But we made a pact, a Navy buddy that went to college and met my wife Shelley the first day of college. Started dating 2 weeks later, and asked her to marry me 3 months later. And this fall will be 40 years.
Wow.
So
Good for you guys.
You know, with good behavior, she could have been out in 15.
Yeah,
You're
I
a lucky
know.
guy.
I tell
Yep.
people, I tell people, she's the brains of the outfit, man. I'm not just saying that. She is. We had 6 great kids, and they've all
Jimmy, you
great
didn't have to
spouses.
say that. We already knew that, buddy.
Yeah.
But thanks for putting that out.
But yeah. So and when we got married, I transferred down to Marist College, and they had a criminal justice program, and I fell in love with it, man. And as soon as I got into it, I loved every bit of it. And so I started going, okay, I'm going to go into law enforcement. I'm going to go into law enforcement. And then I read about this this agency, this DEA, and its predecessor, BNDD. And in the go ahead.
And so tell everybody what BNDD stood for, because that you said that was the agency before DEA.
Yeah, Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs. And when I read about it, this is because you're young. Listen, it's like anything else. Like being in the military, you want to be in the thick of it. You know, my kids are law enforcement and military. When they sign up for the military, they want to be in the thick of it. I want to be, and so I read about this agency, and it says one of the most dangerous, professions you can be in. There's problems with corruption because it's narcotics. There are, horrible people that are involved in it, bad guys. And I'm thinking, yeah, man, I'm in my mind, I'm Captain America. This is what I got to do.
Yeah.
So
you were Captain America, though, but you were the scrawny version at that time of Captain America.
It didn't matter, man. When I was like, this is it, man. Give me my shield and I'm going. So my whole last 2 years in school, that's, I worked hard to get high grades, and I was in Army ROTC as well, and I applied.
What year did you graduate from college?
85. I was a little bit older than most of the guys starting college back then because I'd already been out for a while. But it was good. It really was good. It's funny because my dad would tell my mom earlier, they'll wake up someday and realize they're not that stupid. So it's true statement, man. It's absolutely true because most of us are late bloomers, my brothers and everybody. It's kind of amazing. But yeah, graduated and went to military intelligence school, and probably one of the hardest schools I've ever been to.
Were you at Fort Huachuca? Or
yeah,
where?
Fort Huachuca. Went down there and I wanted to be a pilot, and had passed everything in my last flight physical. They found I had astigmatism, so because I thought, can you see me in a flight?
Dude,
flight
we are
suit?
like brothers from a different mother. It was called the FAST packet back then. You had to pass the FAST, I think, flight aptitude simulation.
Yeah.
I went through the same thing. I had a slot at Fort Rucker, Alabama,
me
Army
too.
ROTC. I had a slot, and some fucking 6-year-old kid comes off I was staying out of trouble. 6-year-old kid comes off the roller skating rink, hits the carpet, dives into my left knee. I am in a cast from my toe to my crotch all summer long. Good for the sympathy thing with girls. Bad for when I got out of it. They brought me back in. They looked at my leg and they said, "You ain't going anywhere, pal."
Yeah. Well, that's
the difference.
kind of with me. Go ahead.
The difference here, Jamie, was they were going to use him for a target. They were going to make you a pilot.
Well,
I would have been a very tough target. Yes.
I got when I graduated and got a commission, I got assigned to a combat aviation unit out of upstate New York, and they were going from Cobras into the attack helicopters, and I'm going, oh, I'm going to look so good in a flight suit. Oh, this is going to be my wife is going to be drooling every day. And I remember sitting down in Fort Dix, sitting in a doctor's chair, and he kept going back and forth and back and forth. I'm like, wait, what the hell's going on? He says, I can't pass you. What do you mean can't pass me? He said, I can't pass you. He says, you have astigmatism. I said, Doc, you don't understand. You see, I'm going to be an attack helicopter pilot, and I'm going to be a DEA agent. You don't understand. You're getting in the way here. He goes, I can't pass you. I can't. I got to tell you, in those moments when they put that, when you look at your flight physical and it says, fail in non-aviation, I forget what it was, but it's pretty clear you ain't flying. And I thought, oh God, this is it. I'm done.
Yeah, but Jimmy, during that time, I had guys that would have been in my class had I made it to Fort Rucker. But you know what happened? Years later, you fast forward to when Clinton was in office and they were declaring the peace dividend. So many people that had 15, 17 years in, they were majors or lieutenant colonels or CW4s, which you'll find Chief Warrant Officer
Yeah.
4s a lot in the flight. Guess what? They were given $75,000. Said,
Said,
thank you for
"See you
your
later."
service.
Yeah.
Yeah, riffed out. No retirement.
But I'll tell you, and I'll say this all the time, kind of unapologetic about my faith and where we stand. So I become a military intelligence officer, one of the hardest things, schools I've ever been to. No kidding. My wife will tell you the same thing. I was like, oh my God. Back then it was still the red thread. And so you had to learn about people and commanders and units and all sorts of stuff. Long and short of it, I'm still waiting for DEA. I graduate academy, intelligence, and I'm waiting and I'm waiting and waiting. Finally, I'm ahead of myself. I'm waiting for DEA, but prior to going to Intel school, I get an interview down in New York City, Manhattan, and I'm sitting there. You got to understand, I've never been in law enforcement, been in the military.
You get an interview with who?
DEA.
DEA,
in
okay.
Manhattan. So these three guys sitting there, and they start asking me questions, and they start asking me questions, and they start asking me. And quite frankly, I don't think I'm doing well on the interview. And I'm a pretty confident guy, always have been. When I got older, when I started I'm going, man, I don't think I'm hitting all the buttons. They're asking me about what happens if you answer a door and a guy's standing there and his gun is down by his hand, down by his side. Today we'd say we'd blow his freaking brains out. But back then, like, I don't know. This is.
Mm-hmm.
And so when it was all said and done, the guy sitting in the middle, I still don't know who it was. He said, do you have anything to say? I said, yeah, I do. I said, listen, I'm not law enforcement. I'm basically saying, but if you train me, I guarantee you I'll be a great agent. I'm telling you right now. So they look at me. Guy at the end says to me, let me ask you something. He says, is his military intelligence school always been in Fort Huachuca? I said, sir, as far as I know. He goes, no. Next 15 minutes, we're having a conversation with a guy who's a prior Army intel guy from stationed in Laos, for years, going back and forth, blah, 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 telling me, and I'm just listening. And then we're all said and done. They said, listen, when you come on this job, and in my mind, I'm going, he just said when I come on this job.
Yeah.
He just said when I come on this job. And next thing you know, when I was done with Intel school, I had to wait another year because the classes back then, we were not hiring. And then
hey Jimmy, were you reserves then, or
yeah, I was really, because I had almost 6 years total enlisted time. So when I joined ROTC, that I wasn't getting paid. I was just doing it. So I didn't owe anybody anything. But I was in a guard unit where I was going, once a.
Okay, I say either reserves or guard, right?
Yeah.
Because the thing is, if you'd been active duty, it would have been very difficult to punch out.
Oh no,
and take
yeah.
a DEA job, yeah.
So it's funny you talk about piloting and everything, because so what I always wanted to do, and when I got to this Combat Aviation Battalion, I got there as the S2, as the intel guy, and the commander who was there said, "Hey, listen, stay with us for a year. Guarantee to send you to flight school." And I'm like, "Yeah, great." Well, it's too late. I was already going to LA as an agent, so. And then I got assigned, when I got to LA, I got assigned to the 902nd MI Battalion out of the Presidio in San Francisco, which was like golf course, dude. It was amazing, because I was an IMA, I only had to do 2 weeks a year.
Well, before you applied for law enforcement, though, didn't your dad have some advice for you?
It's funny because most all of his sons, or a lot of his sons, went some kind of route, either military, law enforcement, or both. And I remember, my dad always says, "Hey, you want to do what you think the Lord's pushing you towards. What's in your heart? What's tugging your heart? And when you're young and stupid, and I don't know." He says, "You'll find. Just keep trying to figure out where you want to go." And most of my teachers thought I should be on an assembly line somewhere putting together Legos. So, but he came out. I'll never forget going up to him and say, "Hey, Dad, I really think I'm being called to go into law enforcement." And I'll never forget him looking at me. He goes, He goes, "You want to be a hero?" And I'm thinking to myself, "No, Dad, see, I'm Captain America. That's who I want to be." I didn't tell him that. I didn't tell him, because he smacked me upside my head. I said, "No, I said, you want to be a hero? If you want to be a hero," he said, "become a fireman. Everybody loves a fireman." He goes, you want people to hate, despise you, become a cop. And I'll never forget it. Never, ever, ever forget it.
And it's so true. We deal with that to today because I got buddies who are firefighters, right? They say, hey, look, the difference between you and us, the public loves us.
Yeah, that's true. It is.
So true. So
He used to go, oh, what the heck magazine or newspaper did he get all the time? And he saw a picture of a fireman carrying out a baby. And I'm listening to him yelling and screaming. I'm like, what the hell is he talking about? Why is he mad? He goes, because 2 shots earlier, the friggin' guy from the precinct, the cop, is probably coughing out his lungs and handed that baby over to the fireman. And now the fireman's the hero. And the cop's puking on the side of the tenement building.
This sounds suspiciously like the FBI and local law enforcement. Hey, we are required by Virginia state law and Florida law to make one FBI joke every podcast. We love them, but hey, we're required. Right?
That's it. There's our time.
Yeah, and by the way, Jimmy, if you need to hack up a lung or something, you just let us know. We'll just text us your address in case we got to send EMS over to you.
I keep forgetting to hit you. I'm sorry.
No problem.
But yeah, so that's and I really was very, and I'm not kidding you, I was very fortunate to come on the job at the time. They weren't hiring a whole lot of people, and when I look back and look at the steps and the places where I've been, I go, man, I couldn't have. I couldn't have written this script. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And when you see your walk and you go, that's why, again, I go, Lord, thank you. I look back and through the bumps and everything, I go, what a ride, man. What a great ride.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think a lot of us are like that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it is. It is. And it's not that any of us are immune from anything, from problems and tragedies and all the other stuff. It's just that kind of look at stuff and go, what a ride, man.
Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of it has to do with your attitude. Are you a glass half empty or a glass half full kind of guy?
Yeah, no, I've always been that guy that goes, okay, it's all right. What, we got a little bit left? Then we can keep going.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a little bit? Let's keep going, man. Don't stop. Don't stop. But again, I attribute a lot of that to, my father's teaching and stuff about, hey, listen, you got, get to work on time. He really was big on, your integrity. But again, he never used that. But he used to say all the time, a liar is worse than a thief. And
Yeah.
I remember a liar is worse than a thief, he would say. So those are, they're those foundational principles in our life. That now, of course, if you looked at us kids when we were younger, you'd just go, what a box of friggin' rocks,
But I'm going to be Captain America.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
You know why? It's because I'm Batman.
Yeah.
I'm Batman. You're Robin. We've had this talk. I'm not saying I'm Batman, and I'm not saying I'm not Batman. Just me and Batman have never been in the same room together at the same time. Just clearing the area here.
But and what you're saying, Jimmy, about following through and don't giving up. That's what Morgan and I went through doing with this podcast. Once we hit 50 subscribers, woohoo!
Yeah, we're rocking, baby.
We're not going to give up.
Yeah, we're rocking. It is because what the issue becomes is, and we see this today in a lot of stuff. It's I'm going to sound like an old guy, but it's too easy to give up anymore about anything. I mean,
it is
about it. About anything. I even when I talk to some men's groups and stuff, I tell them, stop with the whole easy giving up. I got a bump in my marriage. Okay, I'm dumping. I'm getting out. The same thing and we've all had. When you look back in your career, my first year on DEA, I was in.
Hey, let's talk about that. What year did you start? What you finally got on? What year was that?
87. I got on in 87. Went down to Quantico. Met. I still do. One of my best friends who's now retired up in Oklahoma, but. Went back to Manhattan and couldn't believe how much fun this job was. Just, and I was on, I think we were talking yesterday, I came on probably at the tail end of the cowboy days in narcotics, what I would call, the whole thing, on search warrants, you kick a door and the first one to the back of the room wins, that kind of stuff. My first introduction of, this is the other thing when I look back, I said, Lord, thank you for keeping me safe. But I remember getting ready. I had my brand new vest from Quantico. We were going out to rip somebody for 3 kilos in Manhattan. And I grabbed my vest. I'll never forget this, man. One of the guys in the group says, what are you doing? I said, grab my vest. He said, only cowards wear vests.
And
you know what I did as a young agent? I went,
you laid it down.
I said, okay.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, only cowards wear vests. So, okay, that's it. So me and my badge on a chain and my 357 and 2x2 pouch and a pair of handcuffs, we all went out together.
Look out, here comes Jimmy.
Yeah. Well, and I think we ought to talk about that for a second too. You mentioned that during our pre-call, but I want to dive into it. Your 2x2 pouch. People have to remember, before there were semi-automatics, there were what we used to call wheel guns,
Yeah,
or
that's what they
revolvers,
were.
right? And when I first got out of actually my second academy, but the state patrol, we were so advanced. We didn't have speed loaders. We had ammo dumps. You had to dump 6 rounds into your hand and load them one at a time into the revolver.
Yeah.
What was your 2x2?
Yeah, that's what it was, man. 6 rounds on your belt, man. And I tell you what, you get pretty good after I will say this, man. DEA taught us how to shoot. And reload, because there's so many. I think one of the most, we always would hear about the horrible shooting in Northern California, where the guys are doing the same thing. They were reloading one by one, and a couple of cops got wiped out and stuff because of their training. But yeah, so it was all 357, blue steel, a 2x2 pouch, and, all 165 pounds of me. Yeah, we're Captain America. Let's go. We need to do
Model
this.
10, brother.
Look out, baby. I'm no asp, no taser, no pepper spray, nothing. Let's go, man.
You got your ass right here.
That's it, man. Yeah. Let's go.
And that, folks, we're saying ASP, which is a collapsible baton, not ass, but asp, right? And it reminds me of Clint Eastwood in The Gauntlet. I've used this before. He says, "What makes you think you can do this?" He says, "Clyde, because I got the badge, the gun, and the love of Jesus in my pretty blue eyes."
Yes.
There you go.
Now let's roll, right?
It is, but you look back, oh my goodness. So, and then
how did I survive my initial stupidity on this job?
I mean,
I got to say, 1987 was a good year for crops of new agents coming on board, because we were all.
Well, there was about, if you look at the groups back then, the teams, 70% of the groups are made up of brand new agents, and it's amazing we get more guys hurt or killed.
It's like that in Miami also.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, and that's I'm telling you, man. So you look back and go, "Oh, thank you, Lord." And
hey, and Jimmy, but Steve was just talking about 87 being a good car. What year did you get on, Steve?
87.
How far apart? How far apart were you guys in terms of classes?
You were 48, Jimmy.
48, yeah.
I was 53. So
you were you in Sherman's class, Billy Sherman?
No.
Okay.
I know Billy very well, but
no. You guys, DEA had several classes going on at the same time, right? Because you started hiring people.
Yeah, back to back. This when Reagan signed that big criminal omnibus bill, and boom, they hired like crazy. So,
what month did you graduate the academy?
I got there in February, March, April, May. I think it was May.
I started the academy in June, so we just missed each other
in May. So, that was yesterday. And like I said, I was 48, and one of my sons decided that's what he wanted to do, and he was BA 233. I'm like, oh wow, man.
Like when you go back and talk to people about your employee numbers, and they go, "My employee number's like 697." He said, "What was yours?" Like 138.
Yeah. It's like when I got hired by this small police department in upstate New York in Poughkeepsie. I remember seeing the chief, and I'm looking at his badge, and I think it was like 3. And they said, "Well, that's because originally he was the 3rd guy on the job or something." Like, oh my gosh, he was older than Methuselah.
Yeah.
So you get through. Now, you had mentioned earlier, I kind of want to bring it, straight line to where we're going to head with this. But when you got out of the academy, you actually went back to Manhattan, right? But you were living in Poughkeepsie. You were living in upstate.
Yeah.
So that was that was one of your smarter moves too, right? Driving back and forth from Poughkeepsie to Manhattan.
Well, again, the group that I worked with at the time, G-Ride policies and all that other stuff. During the week, I would sleep in the division. They had a little room, a cot, and some beds outside the workout place. So I'd sleep there. I had a brother who lived in outside of Poughkeepsie in Hyde Park, or sometimes I'd stay with him. And then on a Friday when we're done, I'd drive up to 120 miles up to Catskill, right outside of Catskill. And because my wife and my daughter at the time, with my mom and dad were kind enough to let us stay there until we were being transferred. So on the weekends, okay, going home. And then Monday morning early, I'd get up at dark 30 and head back to Manhattan.
Yeah, baby.
And how long did you do that before you ended up out in LA?
That was, we did that from May till I launched out to LA in early August of that same year.
So, but you mentioned something too. There was one thing you wanted to do. You had to do. There's something that was just burning. You said, "I just got to do this before I go."
Yeah. So
besides being Captain America, what was that?
So one of the things, like anything else, is you go, okay, I'm on this job. I have no prior law enforcement experience, but Uncle Sam gave me a gun, handcuffs, and bullets, and so we got to know these guys in the crew, and they were hardworking, tough narcs. And so we're out at some gym hill, of course, at night and having a couple of beers and sitting around talking. And I remember looking at these guys, and you got to understand, it's 1987. Murph, you'll appreciate this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a brand new guy. I'm not staying there with these guys. There's a lot of, we trust this guy, do we not trust this? It's one of those things. You're the boot, you're the rookie.
Yep.
Well, for whatever reason, I'm looking around, and again, these guys took a liking to me, and I just said, listen, I have to ask you guys something. I said, they're looking at me, what? I go, I have to arrest somebody. They're just like looking at, what did you say? I said, I have to arrest somebody.
I have to arrest somebody.
You don't understand. They got hysterical laughing. I mean, they're hysterical laughing because you don't. This is you dream of this stuff at night. Oh, here we come. I'm gonna, and so I think it was the following a couple days later. Here we are in Washington Heights, kind of tough area even back then. And next thing you know, we're they're either flash. I forget what it was, but I'll never forget. My first arrest was a 6'6" Dominican witch doctor, and buddy, I should have been a poster child for DEA. Man, I was, he came out. They said that's the guy. And I'm running up, hands on my gun. I'm standing there with that side thing, I'm like, turn around against the wall. I'm like, hi, this is what it's about. Grab my handcuffs, I throw it on him. I had to know what happened after that. Next thing I know, this guy kicks off. He gets back. He throws an elbow. I lost my sound. There you go. I'm doing everything possible that they taught me in the academy. Arm bar, this, that, yeah. Nothing's working. Next thing you know, all I know is I jumped on top of the guy, grabbed him by the neck, threw him down. I feel like I'm back wrestling in my wrestling days, trying to stay on top of him. He's got one handcuff on, swinging the other one. In the back of my hand, I hear my training guy from the academy, don't ever let this go. It's a weapon. I'm like, oh, God. Then somebody else jumps in. And all there is now I'm swinging haymakers to try to get this guy under control.
Yep.
And what feels like, when you're in a fight, you all know this, feels like that it's 20 minutes. It's actually probably 2 or 3 minutes. And one of the guys jumps in, helps me get him under control. I'm completely out of breath. I'm still excited. I have the adrenaline shakes, right? When I get him under I never knew my hands could shake that much. Get the adrenaline shakes. And this guy looks at me and goes, hey, kid, welcome to narcotics. I went, this is great. This is the best thing in the world. So I would,
and let's put this in perspective. This dude is a 6'6" Dominican witch doctor. Probably weighs how much?
Well, I don't know. He's a tall, skinny guy, and I'm thinking it's not going to be any problem at all. I'm Jimmy Capra. I'm right here. Don't worry about it.
How tall are you, Jimmy?
I'm like 5'10", and back then I was $160.
He thought he had a
mate, but I looked good, man. I had a full head of hair. Oh man, I looked good.
That guy thought he had a mosquito on his back. He's trying to knock that mosquito off.
I'm like, oh my gosh, nobody told me about this. Everybody's supposed to comply. Nobody told me that people don't comply.
Yeah. So for your first arrest, did you utter the magic words once you got him on there? Like, you're DEA, you're under arrest. I mean, how did it end?
Well, before there was a lot of other things that were coming out of my mouth. So,
did you drop an MF on him?
Oh my God! What I didn't drop, So that's why this guy would, when he's one of my partners at the time jumped on top, and he was smaller than me, and we finally got him under control, and he just smiled, and he was cool as a cucumber, man. He was, hey kid, welcome to narcotics, and I just was like, And then I'd call some of the other guys around the country, especially a good friend of mine. I say, hey, what's going on? he said, what are you doing? He goes, oh my God. He said, wait, I arrested this guy. This by now we kind of got on a roll. And I'm like, oh, we're going out. And it seemed like every time we went out, the bad guys wanted to fight. And I'm like, this is great.
And what were they doing? What were they
I
doing?
was sitting on wires. And I remember a buddy of mine, I said, what are you doing? What are you doing out in LA? He goes, I'm sitting on a wire. I'm like, oh, what? What is that? I'm like, and I was joking. I knew. But I mean, what are you doing? Are you going out? He goes, no, I sit on a wire for 8 hours a day. I'm like, oh, dude, this is really? So,
as a rookie, you're all full of piss and vinegar, man. You just want to you're wanting to mix it up.
You want to burn a blue streak through that town. I'm Jimmy Capra.
Yeah.
Stand by, everybody.
That's right.
That's what I tell people. You don't understand. I'm Jimmy freaking Capra. I'm here to save the freaking world. Let's go.
Captain America calls me when he needs something.
That's right. So, and that's why I had this, I'll tell you again, when you look back at your walk. So I knew we had to get out and head to LA. I wound up staying an extra month because I had to do a 2-week with my unit. And so I got a military, waiver for a couple of weeks and everything. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to try to stay in New York. I'm going to try to stay here. And the guys in a group were pushing for me, and the supervisor, then we had a supervisor push. But I'll tell you, man, it was, thank the good Lord that didn't happen. I mean, really and truly, it's, I wound up going to LA and still had a blast.
Well, let's talk about that move, because you grew up in New York. That was the area. I take it your wife, Michelle, you were saying was she New Yorker native?
Yeah, well, yeah, because Shelley's from outside of Binghamton.
Or Shelley. Well, it says Michelle on one of the book
Yeah,
covers,
no,
right?
yeah, it does, because they always want the formal name. But we
you call her Shelley.
Yeah, I call her Shelley all the time. So and she calls me different things. But
I told you we're married to sisters.
Yeah. But anyway, but I remember when I was getting ready to put in for LA, I called her and I said, hey, listen, I'm thinking about putting in for LA. A couple of guys here are going to go there. And not a lot of people want, people didn't want to go to LA, Chicago, New York. Oh my gosh, nobody wanted to go to San Francisco because they were all high cost, and a lot of, people didn't want to go there. And I said, look, we spent time, in the military, and we're on the East Coast. And so she and my wife's always been like this. She goes, I'll go where you want to go. And so we put in for LA and got it. And I'm trying to think when I got out to LA. In August of '87 is when I got to LA.
Wow. So, I mean, you're kind of getting out there in the heyday of, because we had episode number 2 actually was George Young, Pablo's business partner, and he was bringing in dope, left and right into Miami.
Yeah.
And that stuff was being trafficked over to California, and that was becoming obviously a huge hotspot. So when you went out there, what was going on? I mean, because there was the thing too. It's like some of the older DEA, cowboys called, what did they call coke? Kitty dope.
Kitty dope. So so it just tells you, we're the agency is so much better today, but back then we were so compartmentalized. If you weren't working heroin, you weren't working dope. If you were in places like LA, they called that, when I was going out there, they said, well, that's the surfing division. You'll get a nice tan, because they don't do anything. And the reason why is it's 3 hours difference. Nobody knows. Nobody was talking. A lot of the guys and gals in headquarters were all East Coast people. So like, LA, what the hell's going on out there? And in fact, there was a lot going on, and people weren't, they either didn't know or just said, nah, that's probably, you're guessing it, things like that. We would find that out in a few years as we watched the Mexican drug cartels just explode. And I mean, like South Florida, we watched in LA the same thing that what happened in South Florida in the early 80s. And now here it was in Los Angeles. And yet we couldn't get anybody in DEA headquarters to really listen to us. And again, I love my agency, but it's just, we, like any outfit, we go through phases. We're still trying to figure out, hey, what's happening? Where's the dope? Where's this? Where's that? The key spots were at the time was Miami and New York. And then Chicago wasn't really fully online yet as far as what people were seeing. And of course, you saw street dope everywhere. But if you weren't working Miami, if you weren't working New York at the time, it's like, that way it was like, okay, because those were everybody was keen on. And even back then, when you look, that's a lot of places we were allocating resources to as an agency as well. Like, man, I know that now, but so they really weren't paying a whole lot of attention to LA, and probably when we look back, we from a leadership standpoint back then, they probably weren't letting people know exactly what's happened. That's what I mean. From where we were to where they are today is just incredibly different.
Right.
Just incredibly different.
Yeah, and here you are, your first year on the job, trying to convince headquarters, hey, Coke is starting to come up through Mexico here. What the hell, you've been on the job a year. You don't know anything,
you don't
rookie.
have enough time to have an opinion. So,
Right.
but we had, and
But I'm Captain America. I've made an arrest all on my own of a 6'6" Dominican voodoo doctor.
If you can,
do you know who I am?
If you do that, you can. Hey, I'll track the guy down. Don't worry about it. But
Yeah.
I was fortunate to working in a most of us were young agents at Group 1 in LA. It was a little bit of a slow start when I first started there. Slow start in terms of, you're like, okay, what are we doing? Who's got what? And then you look around and 70% of your team are all guys or gals like me. They no time on the job, no, no CIs, no nothing. And I remember one day going in to see my supervisor, and I don't know why I was ballsy. Maybe just because,
You're a New Yorker, man.
Exactly. I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah, it was just, that's the way you were. Hey, you pal, what's up with you?
So I went in to see my supervisor, and I was a smoker back then, and my supervisor was a smoker, so I was no dummy, So every now and then I'd buy him a pack of cigarettes and I'd throw them on the desk. So I never got any duty. I never got any crap jobs. But I remember going in one day and sitting with him. I said, "Sir, I got to do something." He's like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Listen, I got no informants. I got nothing. I got to, if something comes across the desk." So I remember him saying, "Well, if we get something, if I get a CI or something come in, we'll throw it to you." And he did. And first, for whatever reason, he got a phone call. He said, "Here, I don't know the first thing about informant handling. I didn't know what the hell I'm doing, to be honest with you."
You didn't have a senior partner back then?
No, remember, Murph, when we first came on, you sank or swim.
Wow.
There was no, you kind of lean it towards somebody. And I did. There was a guy had a few years on me and a couple of years on me. He was a great guy. We're still friends to this day. And I'll never forget, it was a Colombian informant, blah, 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 this, that, and the other thing. We're going to go meet him. Back then in kind of like New York and other places, we had the NIN system in LA. So you'd want to put your places and stuff in there. So in case another narcotics team was going to go to a place, they'd run it, see if they hit.
Deconfliction.
Yeah, exactly. So, and this was early on, but I'll never forget. So I put it in there. Next thing I get a call from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Office. And they said, "Hey, we're deconflicting. Looks like we're targeting the same guy. We'll come and meet you." So now I'm like, okay. So I meet this sergeant, and I forget it, Sergeant Ed Huffman. He'd wind up being one of my close friends who lost him to cancer a few years ago. And we're sitting out there, and I tell him, I see him. I said, "Well, Sergeant," I said, and I am like, I feel like I'm back in the military. "This is what I got. This is what I have. This is this, that, and the other thing." And he's asking me a million questions. This is exactly.
You're an open book.
I'm just everything. And then he was such a phenomenal guy, a great mentor. He looks at me and he asked me a few more questions. And I remember looking at him. I said, "Sergeant, can I tell you something?" And he just looks at me, "Yeah, Jimmy, what's up?" I go, and this is exactly what I said. I go, "I have no idea what I'm doing." And he just looks at me, starts to smile. That could be a kid. I said, "I have no idea." I said, "I've been on the job for like 6-7 months. I have no idea what I'm doing." And so I'm thinking he's either going to laugh and say, "We'll take it from here. See you later." Puts his arm around me. He said, "Jimmy, don't worry. We're going to get through this thing." He says, not a problem. Fast forward years later with his family, his brother winds up being a good friend of mine, Bill Huffman, who was a sergeant in another police department. And he still says, "You know what? I still remember this day." He said, "You're the only Fed who was that honest to me ever." But work with him. And the next thing you know, we're chasing 300 kilos. And LA hadn't seen that kind of dope in a while. It was there, it was coming. And so there's the guys in another group that used to tease me, "Oh, you're the guy chasing 300 kilos. Well, sure as crap, we wind up getting 350 kilos, 57 assault weapons that were supposedly going back in. Listen, this was in 87, or, the end of 87. And so we hit this load and I'm like, "Oh my God."
Hey, let's talk about that, because that's a precursor for how you end up developing expertise with controlled deliveries, especially of truck, tractor, trailers, and things like that. So let's rewind for a second and go. How did that case come about? How did that case develop? And the reason I ask you that is I want you to provide some context around. Do you think that there had not been a seizure like this because DEA was so focused on heroin that any info and intel related to coke and stuff just kind of, I don't want to say went into a circular file, but it was deprioritized?
Yeah, if I'm really honest, when I look back, first of all, we were still growing. The division was still growing out there. The state and local guys, the guys from Sheriff's Department and LAPD, they were the kings. They were the kings of dope. And I'll never forget our SAC back then, which pissed me off. Said LAPD is our bread and butter as an agency, and this is what I'm thinking, because you're young, you're stupid, you don't really realize what he's trying to say. Is that you're not my bread and butter? I'm a freaking DEA agent. We're DEA. That's how I'm thinking. We're DEA. Bread and butter my ass. You mean because we were so used to, they would make a seizure, they'd call us up if they got money or something else. We would open it, say, go over there, seize the dope, seize the money, grab the guys. In these instant cases, I'm like, why aren't they calling us beforehand? Because there was some conflict between there, like sometimes there always is. And I don't think, well, even though we had task forces and stuff, I don't think we worked as well with our partners early on. I think that might have been the issue. I don't know why. I'm not blaming anybody, but I can tell you from my perspective, I realize, holy crap, I'm learning more from these guys over in LASO and these guys from Huntington Park and the Southeast Area Narcotics Enforcement Team. I want to work with these guys all the time. And so when we hit a case or I get something, I call these guys. You call these guys up and say, hey, I'm working on something, because everybody in the group is trying to work something. And you call these guys, say, here's what I have. And they would come out day or night. And so I started realizing it's not so much their bread and butter, but not only that. So they'll come out. Remember back then, we had, if you're lucky, you got a helicopter. If you're lucky.
Yeah.
But I remember working with some of these guys, some of the guys, especially the SO or the PD, and say, hey, I got something. And after a while, like anything else, you develop trust with them. And it's important, man. They can count on you. That's what it's all about. You're developing trust with these guys. And then they realize, hey, this dopey new kid he's not a bad kid. He may not know much, but he's fun to be around. But you'd call him out.
Learning.
Yeah. He'd call these guys out and they'd say, yeah, we got Adam and Boy. I'm like, what? He goes, we got Adam during the day. What's that? I got a helicopter during the day and I got a helicopter at night. I'm like, oh my God, are you kidding me?
Hey, Frank Capra, jeez, Jimmy.
Thanks. I'm working on my next film, but go ahead.
Working on your next film. Hey, but you brought up something too that I knew as a detective we love the feds for one thing. You talked about it's not just simply seizing the dope because you can make a federal case out of it, but the great thing about it for us is that if you took the seizure of the cash federally, there was usually like only a 10% administrative fee, and the rest would come back to you. And we had a case with the FBI where they did that. Well, then the guy wanted to appeal it. Well, who do you appeal it to? They appealed it to the FBI. The FBI is not going to overrule themselves. I'm sorry. Seizure affirmed.
No.
Did it work that? Is that the reason why they came to you with the cash back in the day?
Yeah, well, it was the reason they came to the feds, and so there wasn't this, there wasn't this, we just want to work with you. Is we were a mechanism to get it in quicker, because back then there was some pretty strict state seizure laws. So some of them you had to give 50% to to schools and all this other stuff. And if you came to us, they could get a bulk of the money back. So I get that. You understand that. But I would get frustrated and say, hey, why don't you call us beforehand? I'd love to, we have some resources, like we can do some things. And so, and that's how when we started getting I started getting this regular relationship with teams. And I remember my supervisor came out one day and said, hey, LAPD just called. They want you to go over. They just seized 300 kilos. I'm like, what? In a tractor trailer. And so we go over and Bill, I think it was Billy Sherman and I went over, talked to these guys, and I'm, hey, how did you get this? And you got to understand, I'm talking back then to what we used to call Jurassic narcs.
Oh yeah.
These guys have been around a long time. This is their city. They know more about Colombians than, just, amazing. And some of these guys are real apprehensive about telling me anything. So, I'm just thinking, man, the tractor trailer, holy crap, man, how much dope. And so we take the case, and the guy pleads out. It was a truck driver and somebody else. And it got us thinking. I go, how much dope is being moved in these things? That just from a curiosity standpoint, man, you know how fast you could move, cross country, and that started my reputation as being the guy that chases tractor trailers around the country.
Well, and let me tell you, as a farm boy and as a trooper, back in the day, who used to stop these things, folks need to understand is that if you stop a truck, tractor, semi trailer, which was the official term for it, those things, depending on what highway you were on, they could be loaded up to 80,000 or 85,500 pounds. I mean, and then you've got a 40-foot trailer on the back that has so many places you can hide things, people, dope. And back before you actually had canines and back before you actually had all the fancy scanning equipment now that the customs, and the border people do, a lot of this had to be intelligence driven because you could spend all day tearing up a trailer and not get anywhere close to the dope.
That's absolutely true.
Right.
So we started looking at more and more of these, and then Billy Sherman and me sat down. I said, there's got to be something. And remember in the day, everything was teletypes, right? You look at all the teletypes.
Oh yeah.
And Epic, which is, oh my God, it's now a clearinghouse. Of course, we didn't have SOD back then, special operations.
Well, so you're violating a rule. We talked to you about, Jimmy, you're being to that poor student again. We told you got to define all the acronyms. So let's talk about Epic and then SOD.
The El Paso Intelligence Center was this major clearinghouse. It's a multi-agency clearinghouse for intelligence where stuff would come in and they'd fuse it. And this is before the Special Operations Division out of Virginia was online. So part of their job was they would get all this info of seizures from around the country and fuse stuff and kind of make an intelligence product out of it. So we started looking at some of these seizures, and Billy and I would lay out these teletypes on the table and say, there's got to be some similarity. And I remember calling down to Epic. I go, here's, I'm freaking Jimmy Capra. I'm trying to figure something out. Can you give me all the seizures in tractor trailers? And this intel analyst was amazing. And so she said, well, I can get you some here and some there, and the ones that are coming across the border, but it all depends on the police departments giving us the information. Because back then, some did, some didn't. It's not like today. And so we pulled all that stuff in. And it was like detective work 101. I can see Billy and I laid out these teletypes on a table, and we basically did, okay, what's alike with this one? What's alike with this one? What's alike? What about 15 or 20 of them? And so he and I looked at each other, and I'm writing down on a freaking yellow legal pad. I'm writing stuff down.
Oh yeah.
Right? And I have this header of about 6 things. I said, Bill, I bet you we can find one of these here. It's a tractor trailer, owner operator. Stayed in one location for too long. And I didn't know anything about tractor trailers. I don't know anything about commercial vehicle, side of the world. And Morgan, you'll love this. And back then, if you looked at a tractor trailer, it looked like it had 27 friggin' license plates on the front.
Oh my God, that was such a nightmare before they had before they had good regulations like with the Interstate Corporation Commission. You had the Kansas Corporation Commission, the California. Everybody had to have a plate and a fuel permit and this and that. And they looked like a freaking, NASCAR, sponsored thing. They got all these different sponsor stickers all over it. You couldn't, what's the tag number? I don't know. Pick one.
Yeah, so you'd run something that'd say not on file, not on file. Well, how can it not? There's 27 of them. I'm being facetious, but. So I'm looking at stuff. So we decide, dang, I can't think of Mark's name, but he was the senior guy there. And he kept telling us, you guys got something. I'm telling you. Mark Lloyd. I think Mark did some time in Thailand, did time in Vietnam. Was such an edifying guy. Was a real senior guy. In LA, when I first got there, there was a couple of, major corruption cases that were going on with a few guys. And Mark headed that up. And he was housed with us, but he was such an edifying guy. For a real senior guy, you wound up going to him and saying, hey, what do you think about this? And hey, what about that? And he was, because there was a season where, you're a young guy and some real senior guy would look at you, well, you got to make your own bones. Get the hell out of here. But Mark Lloyd wasn't like that. He was like, yeah, hey, take a look at this. So when we put this basically profile together. He kept saying, "You have something. Don't." So I do. I again, this is my military bearing and everything else. I go, "Hey, we got to call headquarters. There's somebody in headquarters who's got to know about this." So I called. I think it was the cocaine desk, and I go,
Yep.
"Hey, this is freaking Jimmy Capra, aka Captain America." I said, "We got something here. I'm telling you right
Now, wait a
now."
minute. Did you really? Did you really tell people? Yeah. Hey, do you know who I am? I'm Jimmy Capra. I'm
No,
Captain
no,
America. I
but
mean,
you're so excited because I'm going. I'm telling you, we're gonna find one of these. But I figured I kept thinking kind of instead of from a tactical position or a local position, I'm thinking kind of strategic in my mind, saying, "Hey, we got to get this out there. We got to, maybe that's where I come from weird." But so I call this guy who's on the desk who would later become a SAC years later. And I said, "Hey, my partner and I basically, like my wife says, I have a lot of words." And I'm talking to this guy, he goes, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, what are you talking about?" I said, "I think we got this profile where we can find these vehicles that are moving dope across the country." And he said, and then I tell him about a couple of cases because what happened is when Billy and I first came out with the profile, we went out and we got a truck that was sitting in a place. And it was it Christmas Cola? Yeah, it was Christmas Cola. So we went out and this was 88. And so we go out, find this thing. And the long and short of it is 150 kilos in a tractor trailer. It's like, oh my God. Oh my God. There's something here. Call the desk. And the guy says, Kid, you're just lucky. We already have something. We have an interdiction program, which was out of South Florida. The hell was the name of that, Morgan? Before
I
Convoy.
remember there was a Florida Highway Patrol trooper. I think his name of Jeff Faison used to get he ended up becoming a sheriff down there. That was one of the
Yeah,
premier places where you would learn interdiction techniques
yeah,
because you had
yeah.
I-4, you had I think I-10 or something going through there.
So and
Yeah.
this one he says, "No, we already got a program. You're just lucky." I'm like, I can't believe this guy's not listening to me. I mean, he's literally blowing me off. And I'm like, wait a
Yeah,
minute.
but Jimmy, the other thing too about that other program, that was you'd have state troopers or other people just stopping vehicles like a
Right.
Ford, an LTD, or something. Here's where you hide all the places. Well, you could only hide so much dope in a passenger
Right.
vehicle, and it was good. They have what they call the concealment and the trap database for that stuff. But the money, the big loads are the frickin' truck, tractor, semi
Yeah.
trailers. I mean, the big rigs that are going up and down the highway to where you can put 50,000 pounds of stuff on there, and inside of that hide another 300 to 400
Yeah.
kilos of something.
So we started figuring out, what we did is figured out when we tracked all these things that there's this triangle. So it's East Coast, South Florida, LA. And so we're pinning all this stuff. Said, man, there's really something, something here. And we went to try to get some help through some intel stuff. And they, to their credit, they tried their best. But we're so, again, we're these young freaking agents who are just relentless. We're like, I don't care what you said. We're going to keep doing this. So when the guy told me, became SAC. The guy told me, he says, "You don't know what you're talking about." He goes, "You're just lucky, kid." Just like that. Nothing further. I went, "No, F you." We hung up the
Yeah.
phone. Bill and I looked at each other and said, let's keep going. Well, the next thing you know, we get a truck that's got 300 kilos. Next thing you know, we get two trucks, 750 kilos. Then we're putting them on C5 Galaxies and we're flying them across to Jersey.
And hey, let's talk about that for a second because I've got experience with one of those. One of our guys on our interdiction unit ended up doing that thing. It is the most awesome thing in the world because to do a controlled delivery, you don't let anybody drive the truck. You don't want anything happen to
No.
it. So, courtesy of our friends from the Air Force and through DEA.
God bless them, man. Unless you had, unless you had like on one of the early cases, we had the driver that rolled. So you take a chance and then you do the call forwarding thing. He's going to go.
Mm-hmm.
You take the dope. You still got to put it on an aircraft and fly it out there. And then here's the thing that people would have a hard time with. It's going to Jersey or New York. So they get it. Because, well, you're giving them the dope. You don't understand. It's going there. So we were so used to, got a truck, guy comes, offloads, boom, we grab him. Okay, son, got a driver, right? Got the truck driver, and we got 300 kilos.
But you got a mope. All you got is a mope who
right.
probably he doesn't know what's going on. He was given some money to drive it from point A to point B, and that's the extent of his knowledge.
And he knows because he's getting paid 15, 20 grand. But you're not expanding the case. So we started thinking, Billy and I going, we got to take a chance and do A, B, and C. So we go, okay, listen. So I got kind of hooked up with a guy out of Jersey, Joey Karras, And we said, and this is what happened. So we'd get a big load, and mind you, we'd get these big loads and still not getting any phone calls from DC. So you get this big load, call the guys back east, say, hey, I got 300 kilos in a rig. We just called the military. We're going out to March Air Force Base. We're throwing the tractor on there. We're going to throw a couple of guys on there with the dope. We're coming out. We're going to land at Fort Dix. You guys we basically go, you guys take it from here. We'll be with you. And people say, how could you do that? Because that's where it's going. You expand it that way. So we started developing these things more and more and more. And then you start to figure out intel-wise, hey, what do we have? Where are we going? How big is this network? And
but Jimmy, just to back up a little bit there and explain to the listeners, this wasn't an easy thing to do.
No, geez,
given credit to the office that it's going to, because the boss wanted stats.
Yeah. This was
somebody else gets your stats.
This was a cardinal sin, man. And you'd be fighting with people, say, listen, we have to do this. Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to tell them that we're going to take the dope seizure. But on that end, they would, they try to do their best to track it down. And at the time, a lot of guys on the East Coast, I mean, leadership wise, they wouldn't let the dope get 10 feet away from the tractor trailer. And it's New York City. It's, Newark, New Jersey. I get it, man. Yeah. So, but that's what we started doing. And again, go back to Mark Lloyd. When I'd say nobody's listening to us, Mark said, keep going. You got something. So we wrote this profile up called Operation Convoy. We submitted it. And
now, wait a minute. Was your official theme song from CW Call? We got ourselves a convoy.
I would love that, man. And the next thing you know,
were you Rubber Duck? By the way, who was Rubber Duck?
Rubber. So I would like to say, but I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. But
I'm Captain America. You can be Rubber Duck.
Yeah. So so that's how I started getting involved, and we started banging them, man. We started banging these trucks, and we started developing these things, and we started developing these controlled deliveries and making these connections, and then the local PDs were always with us, and we had this ad hoc task force. And every now and then you'd run into some friction with some of the, the PDs that you're working with, because it's big loads and everything. But you got to get beyond that. You know what I mean? Because they have politics too. You don't realize that at the time as a young agent, you're like, what the, but now you look back and say, hey, everybody's got pressure coming from different areas. But at the end of the day,
some of the small jurisdictions, the chief was like, no, it's coming through my jurisdiction. We're taking it down here.
Yeah. Matter of fact, so the Christmas cola thing that we got, we were so excited about. We got it. By that time, Mark Truble was in our group. He was a senior guy. He came out of Cochabamba. And I will tell you this, and again, this is what Lloyd would say. He goes, I've never seen a group in my entire career work like this. I've never seen that. And I think a lot of it had to do with our youth, being young and full of piss and vinegar. And we just were relentless. And if you went out on a deal and you didn't call the rest of the group or some of the guys, they'd get pissed at you. What are you doing? They wouldn't go home. So when we sat on a truck, we'd get a hotel room. Guys wouldn't go home. They would not. They don't want to go home. They want to stay because it was going. Things were happening, and we were close. So I think Truble and I were the ones with kids. So we'd either go to his house for a barbecue and beers, or we'd come to my condo, which was smaller, and you not only got to know the team, you got to know their families, and that made a big difference. I mean, it made a huge difference. And again, I can see Lloyd say, I've never seen a group working like this. And so constantly going out there. So anyway, I got this, kind of reputation of, being the tractor trailer, Billy and I being the tractor trailer guys, and the group did as a whole too. And they were working a bunch of other things. So everybody was working. But in one particular case, we were going by the Ramada Inn off of Gage Avenue in LA. And I spotted this beautiful truck, went in and ran it, nothing negative. Go in and talk to the gal inside. She gives me the guy's name and everything. I run it. There's a hit. It's a minimal hit.
Well, and when you say it's a hit too, DEA had their own system. Because the one thing I wanted to add, just a bit of context to, the El Paso Information Intelligence Center, was actually run by, even though it was run by DEA, it was staffed by a lot of people. But that was pretty much a
military.
But that was a DEA project, but you had your own intelligence system that you would also check people through.
And so you check it to see, because every time you wrote a report, it's ever like the ATF, the FBI, every time you write a report, you log it in there, so you can query it and say, hey, what is this, including phone numbers. And I think there was a minor hit, But the guy was been at the hotel for like a week. So you're an owner operator driving a big rig, and you're there for a week. You ain't making money. That
Right.
truck's got to move. And so the only reason we got to know that is, again, you look back and go, I say, hey, how do we find out about this commercial stuff? So California Highway Patrol, we went to them, called them up, said, hey, can we get somebody? So when I look back, he wasn't the supervisor at the time who would do this. We did it. We should go up and call Sacramento, California Highway Patrol. So can I talk to a captain or a lieutenant? This is who I am. Blah, 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 blah. We'd like to get somebody assigned here. Here's what we're doing. And they're like, who the hell are you? I'm Special Agent Capra.
I'm Captain America.
So anyway, long and short of it, we wound up with getting a CHP guy a few years later assigned. But before he was assigned, we would call him all the time. And so he started teaching us about commercial vehicles and what they could do and what they couldn't do. And so you learn a lot. I mean, you wind up learning a lot. So anyway, find this rig, get out there. We're sitting on it. I remember looking out the hotel room and I see a freaking 5 cars all following each other come in. I go, that's another team. Another team's on something.
Yep.
So I meet with these guys. And I think I told you yesterday, I've never seen a more beautiful group of narcotics agents in my life. Muscle heads, shorts,
Good tans.
yeah, man. I mean, muscles and I'm looking at this one guy. I go, where is his gun? Where? And he's going, listen, we got something on this truck at ABC. And I go, great. And so I give him the Jimmy Capra tractor trailer profile spiel, blah blah blah. And I'm like, and I'm all excited. Like I said back then, I'm smoking, probably eating a sausage sandwich, and I'm getting all excited. And he's sitting there. To this day, I can see one of the guys waving his hand in front of his face to get the smoke out of it. So, excuse me. So I'm telling him this and telling him that. He goes, well, we've been working this truck for a while. And I had a funny feeling the guy's lying to me, but hey, we can work it together. We can work it together. But they were being reluctant. Anyway, long and short of it, the guy says, okay. He leaves. Bill Huffman, which was Ed Huffman's brother, who worked at a Huntington Park, looks at me and goes, you told him too much. I said, what? He says, you told them too much. He goes, they're going to screw you. No, these are other cops. They're not going to do that. The truck starts to move, or the cab moves. They leave the trailer. So we get out there. We start following them. Next thing you know, the other team's on them. Next thing you know, I get a call from my supervisor. It says, hey, we got a complaint from this police department that you're getting in their way and you're causing hazardous something. I'm like, what the hell? Next thing I know, we're at a truck stop in Riverside. And the guys that I'm working with, now these are all state and local narcotics guys from small departments, this ad hoc team. And this one guy comes up and goes, I'm going to beat the shit out of this guy. I'm telling you right now, we're going to fight him. We're going to keep. I said, no, Jesus, no. So
Wait, the guy say he's going to beat the shit out of what, the truck driver?
No, the other police department, the other guy, the sergeant, and everything.
Okay.
The pretty boys. So, Jim, they wanted to fight him. So, Jim, we're not going to take this shit. Hang on, I'm sorry. We're not going to take this shit. And I'm like, oh, guys, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. So I get the sergeant, I pull him off to the side, and I'm pissed. I go, listen, man. I said, this is crazy. I said, you're not talking to us. We're not talking to you. These guys want to literally, this is not how it should be. Again, what do I got on the job?
And who says there's no cooperation with state, local, and feds? I mean, we want to get there first so we can beat your ass.
So I of course, and again, I'm young, still naive, and going, I don't understand this. Why don't you want to work? You know what I mean? I'm like, you're so naive. And so I go, you can have it. I said, I'm going to tell you something right now. I said, I'll have another truck in a week. I'm telling you. But this is crazy, and I don't think it's right. I don't think it's perfect. I'm trying to be really above board. Even though I'm still young and naive and everything. So we leave, and I get these guys. I said, look, guys, this wasn't working. This team that I'm with, CNET, Southeast Area Narcotics Enforcement Team, Huntington Park, Maywood, Bell Cudahy, Southgate, these are all 1- and 2-man narcotics teams that said, hey, we'll work with you, Jim. We got this ad hoc task force. We'll work with you. I had them out there literally for a week, 24/7. And now this young agent, he's got 2 years on the job, pulls everybody off, says, guys, I'm sorry, this is not worth it. I guarantee you we'll get another one. We'll get another one. So they all went home, and the next thing you know, a week later, we're on one of the biggest cases still in history.
Well, and let's lead into that too, because you bring up I learned this too from working with federal agents and some state agents too. That's where I first learned the story. Have you ever heard the story about the young bull and the old bull?
I think I did hear that. This old bull goes a little bit slower.
Well, it's a young bull and old bull sitting on top of the hill overlooking this pasture, and there's a group of cows. And the young bull says, "Let's run down there and have our way with one of the cows." And the old bull goes, "Let's walk down and have our way with all of them." It's like, I was always that young bull. Yeah, let's go down and get one.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you get so short sighted because you don't realize if slow is smooth, smooth is fast. If you just take your time and get down there, you can make much bigger cases. You can have a much bigger impact. But I think you hit upon a key problem I dealt with when I was doing the work inside of justice on information sharing. That was my first experience meeting Derek Maltz, by the way. Um, he is a continuing thread in all of our stuff. But it was all of these folks who just they wanted to make the case as opposed to let's really solve crime.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you can get a stat, but to your point, you can arrest the truck driver, or let's do the controlled delivery and work this thing up and find out really where it's originating. So I say all of that to kind of let's not gloss over too much your lead up into what is going to become one of the, if not still the biggest case that happened out there. So let's talk about the lessons you learned out of this one, and how did you come about developing the info, the profile, and stuff to lead you into this next case, which is going to be the tip of the iceberg that leads into the bigger stuff. So let's start setting the context and the groundwork. What kind of organizations were involved in this? Who were you seeing in terms of the cartels that were involved? And what were some of the main corridors that you were focusing on where you were finding these truck, tractor, semi trailers?
Yeah, so we knew that this great triangle was out there. If you looked at a map of the United States, so we knew it was West Coast, East Coast, South Florida. We knew that. We knew all the drivers had of Latin descent, Cuban drivers, mostly Cuban drivers, to be honest with you. And so, but we knew that when we were looking at from a profile standpoint, even back then, we knew we can't mention the drivers. We don't mention, even though we just find out it's the dope dealers are not going to go to Yellow Freight and hire them to move stuff. It's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen.
That's why they had to, and a term of art too for folks too. When you're an owner operator, it means you own your own rig. And the trailers belong to somebody else, but you own your rig. And you charge somebody to haul their trailers, their semi trailers, somewhere throughout. But you're an independent businessman, so to speak.
Right. And back then, got to figure out back then is we're part of the problem too, because it's like, okay, just want to grab it and move on. And so when you're thinking about, listen, we got to advance this thing, and this just wasn't you'd run these up the guys that you work with, and when you have your teammates and your partners, not my supervisor, mind you, say that's a good thing. We should keep going. And you got guys like I said, Mark Lloyd and Mark Truville going, that's a good thing. It's chancy, it's iffy, but let's do it because no one was doing that at the time. You know what I mean? No one was. We weren't, and maybe that was a good thing about being young and being a risk taker in terms of, oh my God, what if we lose it? What if we lose the dope? Well, it's not going to that dope is not going to wind up in PS, 140. That's going to another doper.
Right.
But there was always this. Go ahead, Bob.
Was there a significance attached to most of the drivers being Cuban? Was there a big Cuban population in California?
Out of Miami. Most of the drivers were out of South Florida. And so, when you talk to them, most of them were all Mariels. They came over.
And then when you look at the markings on the kilos,
that's how we knew. And when Morgan asked, what would you know? Is so back then, gosh dang it, Murph, maybe you remember the operation. So
Fountainhead.
Yeah, Fountainhead. So we would get these markings, take a picture of it, send it to Epic, and they'd say, hey, this belongs to so. And I didn't know a whole lot back then about the Medellin or the Cali cartels initially. I mean, I didn't. You're a kid in Los Angeles, and you're trying to get dope. But one of the things, as you start to think beyond yourself and you start to think beyond local and start to think globally, you start realizing this big picture of what's impacting the United States and how significant that is, and how significant those narco dollars are, and how significant that is destroying economies and nations. And you don't, you first start out, you don't think that way. You think, I'm Captain America, I'm putting bad guys in jail, and that's going to be good. And all of a sudden,
taking dope off the street.
Yeah, all of a sudden things starting to go, and you're going, holy crap, this is worse than what some of these real smart guys are writing about in terms of how big it is. How huge, how much money, because corruption is the linchpin for everything. So as we run these markings, as we get this dope, we start seeing, oh, this belongs to this guy, this belongs to who, this belongs to Medellin, this is Cali, and so those became important. You realize how not just the amount, but what about the markings? What about, right? This is the predecessor to SOD. What about the phone numbers? What are these guys carrying? Whose numbers are they connected to? So we started running numbers like that. We started going, okay, these things are important, and putting them in databases. So,
Hey, and Jimmy, too, to put it in perspective for people, if they're looking at a map, the reason this tied it so well together because Miami sits right on 95. So, I mean, it runs down to there. So you can take 95 goes all the way up through the East Coast, through Virginia, up into New York. But then at Jacksonville, you hit I-10, and I-10 now is a east-west corridor to go to Los Angeles. And by the way, just pulling up the map, it's really cool. You go to Santa Monica, which is outside LA, and you can see the actual beginning about a mile from the beach of where I-10 starts.
that's true. That's true.
And but to your point, that's why trucks made such a natural vehicle for this. Pardon the pun, because there are tons. I mean, interstate is just loaded with trucks. I mean, and then you think about the trucks coming across the border. We'll talk about NAFTA later. I mean, there are hundreds of thousands of millions of vehicles out on the highway, and unless you've got that profile, unless you know what you're looking for, you're basically it's the equivalent of a needle in a haystack. You get lucky because a trooper stops a vehicle, something doesn't add up, as opposed to you guys are using a lot more science now to say we are looking for these characteristics of somebody. And your point too, if somebody's sitting in a hotel for a week, these owner operators, like you say, unless they're sitting on money, they're losing money. And why can they afford to stay in a hotel for a week? Because they just got paid 20 grand or 50 grand or whatever.
And it's not the local trucker hotel, the Motel 6 or some flea bag. It's they're staying at a Hilton or and that's where we go after. We never went to truck stops. We went to the local nice hotels in the area. So that's that's kind of what we did. But what's happening is when you look back is we're learning and we're learning fast. We're realizing, hey, wait, let's keep looking beyond this. What does this mean? What does this mean not in terms in the country, how much dope is actually coming in? What does this mean in terms of what we got going on in South America? What does this mean? So then Murph, you'll appreciate this. Remember at the height of the cocaine cowboys days, the whole Tony Montana, we'll get into that later, but dope was coming into South Florida like a friggin' sieve. And
absolutely,
that's when they started the task force down there under Vice President Bush. Before it began, they started task force, and he dumped tons of money, tons of interdiction there. We find this out later, right? And we realize they're making an impact by stopping boats coming in from the islands up in the Gulf, right? When all the smugglers are coming up in the Gulf. I mean, the Joint Task Force is doing a hell of a job. The dopers, they'll go, I know what we'll do. We have Mexican bad guys that have been moving people and goods up through the southwest border for years. We'll just use those, and we watched that happen because we were going, wait a minute, I got networks in East Coast and Florida coming to LA to get dope. I don't understand this. Well, it became a choke point in South Florida.
Yeah.
So we start to witness this and go, oh man, this is what's happening. And so now you laugh again. You're trying to talk to people about this. Say, I think this is what's happening. And people look at you, yeah, you don't know what you're talking about, kid. So okay.
It all comes through South Florida. It can't come into California.
What are they going to go to? Then they're going to South Florida. What are they going to go to LA for? And before we hit the big case, Sherman and I would sit, and the guys in the group would sit because Mark Jubal did time in South Florida. And so we're sitting there going, I think this is happening. We're sitting there going, man, this is a big thing. I mean, from understanding smuggling, trafficking, this is a big, this is a big deal.
Well, and Jimmy, just from a logical standpoint, if you throw a lot of money, resources, and you start choking off the supply routes, you start choking off coming into Miami, it's displacement. It displaces it to somewhere else. So the question is, where does it displace it to? You didn't stop it.
No.
You've just displaced
exactly.
it.
Right.
So,
and you come into South Florida, you're not having, you do go out and build alliances with the Caribbean islands, but it's not like Mexico where it's a border. You can interdict anywhere on the open ocean that you want to.
No, that's exactly. I mean, it's exactly right. So this is coming, and all this stuff is coming in so fast. In terms of, you got to learn a lot. You're trying to, and mind you, you got a couple of years on it. I got a couple of years on the job. So you're half-assed intimidated, but you got good, some senior guys who are going, you're onto something. You got a good group of men and women who goes, hey, let's go. Let's do it. So that changes the kind of the dynamic. If it was any other way, maybe it wouldn't have happened like that. It's easy to guess, but it didn't. We were kind of relentless as a team. We were relentless.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's good that you had the senior guys there. That's in Miami, the group I went into. There were only 4 senior guys, and all the rest of us were fresh out of the academy.
Yeah.
But a couple of those senior guys knew the job. Gene Frankar, Kenny Peterson. I mean, just outstanding folks to work with.
So, matter of fact.
So let's. Yeah. So as you're doing that, let's start now setting our path. So now we're setting the context. So it's hard to get people's attention, but you're still pushing forward, right? Because kid, you don't know what you're talking about. That hasn't stopped you yet, obviously, because you're a New Yorker. That stuff doesn't bother you, right? So let's start talking about now that you've built up this database of knowledge, in your head, or these profiles. How does that start working now for this next seizure we're talking about? So now take us on that path now towards identifying it, making the case.
Yeah. So now we kind of know what we're looking for in terms of, hey, this kind of fits the bill, this fits the profile type of stuff. And not only that, we're working with like every day we're working with ATF, and that we just teamed up. Billy Queen was the agent that we're working with, and Billy retired some years ago. He's got a book out called Under and Alone. He's just a terrific guy. Another guy, former, I think M60 gunner in the Army, and the tail end of Vietnam, I think he was there. But Billy just was relentless. So we kind of teamed up with him and a couple of his guys, Mike Dawkins and some other guys that were always with us on these cases. And I would say,
wait a minute, I'm shocked. 2 federal agencies working together like brothers?
So,
who knew?
I know. So, but and from time to time we say, hey, Bill, is your boss is getting pissed because we haven't found any guns with anybody yet. He goes, no, we can do this. We're going to do this. So one of, like I told you, when we had that run-in with that PD, and I told him, hey, we'll find, another case in a week. I'm out doing a search warrant with my buddy Ed Huffman, and I get a call from Billy Queen because he had been with us on a lot of these truck cases. And he said, and I'll never forget. So, of course, we got beepers back then, beepers. People are like, what the hell is that?
Oh, yeah.
I got a beeper, and I look down, and I got a phone number with a 911 after it. So I get on it, and it's Billy goes, Jimmy, he goes, we got a tractor trailer in Sylmar. I said, okay, no, what do you know about it? He goes, we got a duty call, blah, 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 this, that, and the other thing. So, okay. And here's what we find out. So in a warehouse, a small light warehouse section in Sylmar, California, this guy who owns a tiny little factory or something, he makes widgets, is a former truck driver. And so every week, this giant tractor trailer backs in to this tiny little warehouse area, taking up all the room. Well, the guy who winds up becoming, an informant for us is a former tractor trailer driver. And he's pissed because he hears the tractor trailer. It doesn't sound good. He can tell they're not taking care of it. He's actually more pissed about that than anything else. But he's a little.
So this guy's got no clue of criminal activity. He's just saying, you guys aren't taking care of your equipment correctly.
That's what gets him started. But then he starts looking and goes, these guys are well-dressed guys. They're being kind of real surreptitious, blah, 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 this, that, and the other thing. So we go out.
It's just not all adding up.
Now, so Billy Sherman and I go out. So we said, all right, listen, we're going to Sylmar. I never forget. Hey, I'm going out to Sylmar. We're from downtown LA out to Sylmar at 2:00 in the afternoon. It's going to be a nightmare. So Bill says, come on, I'll jump in with you. So we go out to Sylmar. On the way out there, just as we get off the friggin' freeway, I pass a hotel, a shithead hotel, and there's another beautiful truck sitting there. I go, whoa, 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 stop. So I run the truck. By then, now we're hooked in to DOT. Now we're hooked into the ICC people, Interstate Commerce Commission, Department of Transportation. So now I got access to all these numbers, and we're running, and there's hits left and right on this tractor trailer. And I'm like, oh, Billy, this is going to be a good one. We're going to have this. No, let's go out and talk to this guy. A couple of miles away, we go out, we talk to this guy, and we're fat, dumb, and happy. We just pull into the lot,
When you say you're talking to, which guy are you talking to? The original guy?
This is the informant. He would be an informant.
Okay.
And so literally we pull in, not thinking about anything. We're not taking any, we're not being surreptitious, nothing. We go in, hey, here's who I am. Thank you very much. And this guy starts going off. He goes, something's not right. I'm just telling you. And we're looking around. This is a kind of a nice area. This is a relatively nice area. So I go, okay, thanks a lot. I think Billy and I get back in the car. I go back out to look at this other tractor trailer. And because we're looking at the warehouse where he's talking to, and there's nobody there. I think, was there a car outside? No, there's just nobody there. We literally went up to the door. It's a glass door. And I got my hands trying to look in. That's how, it's nothing. I'm thinking, it's nothing here. No big deal. Go out to look at the other truck. And I was going to call it. This is absolutely true. And Bill looks at me and goes, hey, let's go back to that other place. Yeah, okay. So we go back. We park outside at a fence on the other side. And we're just sitting there. And like it was yesterday. I light up a smoke, roll down the window, got the radio tunes playing. This pickup truck with a cap pulls in. And I'm going, oh, this is kind of interesting. Two guys, very well dressed. They look like well-dressed white guys. I mean, slacks, nice. Oh, they're going into our warehouse. He's got a key, opens the door, goes in, and I hear something start up. I'm like, what the hell is that? The roller doors come up, and this guy's coming out to the back of the pickup truck with a forklift. Now I'm going, hey, this is kind of interesting. I should ask Billy, they're like 40 feet from us, maybe, on the other side of a fence. And he reaches into the cap, and he's struggling with a U-Haul box that I say, that's a 50-kilo box. I knew right away. You can't tell me. I know what a 50-kilo box is. That's a 50-kilo box. So Bill and I decide to get tactical and crouch down in the car. It's too late. He's never seen us. I'm like, shit.
You are 40. I mean, you're 40 feet away. I mean,
That's
surveillance 101, man. That's pretty damn. That's like in the movies. You see the car tailing the other car. Nobody ever sees them, and they're like 10 feet off their bumper driving through the countryside.
You don't even need binoculars.
No, so I'm like, shit, no, they're picking up dope, and I'm so excited. So I'm trying to call this is how bad the radio system was back then. So I'm trying to call the group, get the fuck out of here. Come on. There's at least 100 kilos going in this warehouse. And so they grab two boxes that go in. I go, that's 100 kilos, baby. And I'll never forget, as guys go into the warehouse, Sherman looks at me to this day, goes, let's take him. He says, we can do it. Let's jump the fence and we'll take him. I said, no, dude, let's call.
There's two of you, unknown targets on the inside.
We can take him. I said, let's call the group out. So now I get a hold of the guys in the last week that had out for 24/7, right? The team that I had on that we're going to fight the other guys with. I called them up, never forget, called Billy Huffman. I said, Bill, I'm in Sylmar, California. This is what I got. I know 100 kilos went in there. By now, people believe. Now they're believing me. Now they. And Bill did already. He already was like a big brother to me. He said, okay, I'll get the team. It's going to take us a little time, but we'll get out there. I called Mark Truval up. He was in the group. I said, Mark, this is what I got. A, B, C, D, F, G. I'm telling you. And I never forget, Mark says, hey, Jimmy, are you sure? I go, Mark, I'm positive. 3:00 on was it a Friday? I forget. But they all come out. The whole team comes out there. By the time we get everybody down, the guys inside the warehouse come out. They're in a van, a small little like minivan, and both of them leave, and we go, we're not going to be able to follow these guys. There's no way. But they're going to be back. They're going to be back. So they leave. I'm itching, going, God, we can fire these guys. The team comes out. It's now about 5:00 in the afternoon, and everybody's sick. I go, look, guys, I'm telling you right now, and I am so excited because I know there's 100 kilos in that warehouse. There's 100 kilos. So Huffman looks at me. Billy looks at me. He goes, okay. Goes out. He looks. Let me look around the place. So outside the warehouse, in a little area between the fence and the warehouse, there's all these U-Haul boxes. They're all crushed down. He goes, listen, when we get a dog, we'll run a dog by the thing. That might help us out. So, okay. So we get a dog from one of the local PDs. Comes out. The dog goes batshit. Literally carving through the dog, I've seen dog hits before, but this dog went crazy. I'm like, oh, this is great. And then they go,
there's so much dope, the dog's ODing himself.
So they're going, well, we can get the warrant tonight. And so I'm looking, now mind you, Billy and I both have maybe 2 years on the job. And they go, what do you want? Never forget, Bill Huffman. He goes, what do you want to do? Now, this is a seasoned narcotics agent. Truval could have taken over as well. Truval could have said to me, this is what we're going to do. But they got to ask, what do you want to do? I said, I think it's best if we go out, we follow, try to figure out where the dope is coming from, ABC. So the senior guy, Mark Truval, says, okay. The senior friggin' sergeant says, okay, we'll do that. What time? I said, I'm going to be out here at 4. I'll set up. So the next morning, we set up at 4:00 in the morning. Team starts rolling at about 5. Set up in the area. Now, outside the warehouse, there is a phone number for commercial real estate. And I decide, I'm going to call these guys. What the hell? We got nothing to lose. I know there's dope in there. So by 9 o'clock, so anyway, what happens early in the morning, guys show up, doors open up, they throw a box inside a car and they leave. Now we have a whole team following them. So they go and I stay on the warehouse.
And just explain that, Jimmy. Why did you follow those guys?
Well, now we know it's going somewhere. Now they're taking dope to go somewhere. So now we want to put that. Now we want to expand the cases. Who's it going to? Is it going to somebody else? Are they involved? It's going. They're either taking it to a customer or something else. So now we have
and plus we don't let dope.
No. Well, we're pretty again. If somebody says, "Did you know it was dope?" I said, "Well, it's like writing a warrant based on your training experience. That box, that U-Haul box, probably got dope in it." So the team leaves and they go with it. And me and somebody else stay behind. I call the commercial number up. I called whoever it is. I said, I need to talk to somebody about a warehouse in Sylmar, California, off of Bradley Street. This is exactly what I got. He goes, 12898, Unit A. I went, oh shit, we're burned. We're done. And I went, yeah. He goes, yeah, come on down and talk to me. I went, this guy's going to make phone calls. It's going to be over. No phone. Again, mind you, we don't have any phones. We're working on beepers, got to stop on pay phones. So I go out there, talk to the guy, nicest guy in the world. He goes, we always suspected that these guys were friggin' no good. I go, well, why? Why didn't you call? He goes, how come you never called? He goes, oh no, they pay great. Every 3 months we get a different guy that pays us in $20 bills, $3,000 a month. I went, okay. I said, can I get copies of the paper? So now copies of the paperwork, I got names and stuff. And these are not these aren't the sharpest tools in the shed. So we got real names and they're all from Mexico. So they're all from Mexico. So I get back and I'm like, holy shit, this is pretty good. Now somebody shows up, there's a car swap. We decide to take another person. So now me and my team take this car and we're driving all over. We wind up going to a nice area, I think in Sherman Oaks, to like these executive condos. And we put these guys down in these condos. And so we put them down in the condos. And I said, well, these are nice areas. Let me go talk to the manager of the condos. We pinned the guy to a parking spot with a number on it. And we don't know who these there are. So I went, we badged ourselves. It was Sherman and I again. So here's what I'm looking for. This is ABC. We're doing a narcotics investigation. I don't know if we get that kind of help anymore. But this guy was like, yes, sir, come right in. Here's copies of this. I got all these. Now I got names. I got names of everybody. I got 1, 2, 3, 4 names of people, all from Mexico, all with their names, passport numbers. I'm like, this is great. I still don't know what we have. You got to understand. I think there's 100 kilos in the warehouse.
Yeah. And how big is your team now? How many folks have you got out on the team right now between surveillance and watching and stuff going on? How many folks do you have out?
We have one team that's still was still on the car that they followed out that did surveillance on, he made surveillance and he dumped the car. And so what they did, smart, because they were smart cops, is they watched the guy get out. He burned surveillance. So he made that he was being followed. He went inside a restaurant or a bar and he kept looking out. And so Bill Huffman called me, goes, what do you want to do? I said, Bill, you're the senior. I mean, this is how it was. You make the call, whatever you want to do, because we're burnt to a crisp. It's okay. He said, we're going to jack him. We're going to jack the guy up and talk to him. I said, all right, that's fine. So meantime, we're at the condo, right? We're up at the condo. So we got the place for the condo. Bill calls back. He says, we got the guy. He can't hardly speak English and, or didn't speak English at all. I said, okay. He said, so we asked him what his name was. This is what the guy says, my name is Ronald Reagan. I said, no, come on, kid. What's your name? He said, my name is Ronald Reagan.
Now we got Captain America going to arrest Ronald Reagan.
We got a box that's in the trunk. He's telling us he's Ronald Reagan. So they said, we're going to get it. We're not, because they're going to toss the car, right? They could have just tossed it. He banned it because he didn't take. So we're going to get a search warrant for it. Smartest thing. Back then, the DA in LA County we loved him. I can't think of the guy's name. They got a search warrant for the car. Inside the car, there's 20 kilos. But in that search warrant, guys, I think it was DJ Fitzgerald who did the search warrant. He writes the search warrant. Says when we approached, the suspect A or whatever it was, When we asked him for his name, he identified himself as Ronald Reagan, and it says, the detective so and so is familiar who Ronald Reagan is, and this is not Ronald Reagan. It's in the search warrant. It's just the funniest damn thing. So I get a call.
Yeah, but you got to articulate.
So I get a call. Now we're getting into nighttime, right? We're now into early evening nighttime. I get a call, say, hey, we got 20 kilos. I said, great. He said, give me the information from there. We'll go back. We'll write a search warrant for the warehouse. We're going to write a search warrant for the condo. Good, giddy up. So we get there. Now it's pushing on 9:15, 9:30. We get a search warrant for both places. So Bill and I and our team now go knock on the door for the condo. And we get inside, and I recognize the guy who's sitting there. He's one of the guys who was driving the vehicle. So not thinking, because I say, hey, buddy, I forget what I said. Hola, So we search the place. Really, there's some money in there, nothing else. I'm asking the guy, hey, where are the keys to the warehouse? The warehouse door was glass. This is how we're thinking. The warehouse doors are glass. So we're thinking, hey, try to get the keys, because it's going to be a bitch to board this thing up late at night. You're going to get the 100 kilos. So I asked the guy over and over again. None of us speak Spanish. I think one of the local cops did. So he hands us keys, because here's the keys. There's like 10 keys on a ring, So I finally get a hold of Mark. Mark says, dude, we're pushing on, 10 o'clock. We can't do it. So I give the keys to Sherman. I said, get out there.
Well, wait a minute. You're pushing on 10 o'clock and you can't do it. Why?
Because the search warrant was only good till, I forget what the hell was the rule. You can't do it after 10 o'clock at night or whatever. It says we got to get in before 10.
Was that a federal search warrant or a state search warrant?
It was for statewise. And I forget. Like I said, I forget. So sure.
No, I think that was right, unless it was like, California was a little weird, but I think unless somebody's life was in jeopardy or whatever else, they had this rule that said
10 o'clock.
You couldn't do between 10 a.m. or 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. or something like
exactly.
that.
So
you know why? Because criminals need their sleep, by God. If you're going to get up and do your criminality, you got to get a good night's sleep.
Exactly
That's right.
So Sherman, because remember back then, we got no lights and sirens on our cars. We got nothing.
Yeah.
Sherman has a little red light. Said, dude, you got to get out there before 10.
Hey players, that's the end of part 1 of Jimmy Capra and his seizure of 21 tons of cocaine, the largest one in the Los Angeles area. We've got a lot more coming up in part 2, which will come out on Thursday. In the meantime, go visit our website, gameofcrimespodcast.com. We've got a lot of great stuff there. We've got our merch. We've got our book list that you can go to. Jimmy's books will be on there. Remember, he's got 6 books out that he has written, everything from kids' books to a book on leadership. So you'll see all of them there on our book list. Also, go visit us on the socials, at Game of Crimes on Twitter, at Game of Crimes Podcast on Facebook and the Instagram. But go visit us at patreon.com/Game of Crimes. We have a ton of good stuff there, new stuff coming out, including our new segment called 911. What's your emergency? This one's going to be fun. We've got a lot of good episodes coming up. So everybody, thank you for staying tuned. We've got part 2 of Jimmy Capra and his monster seizure of 21 tons of cocaine coming up next.